So this is the Fanatiq show. We're finally back. We took a pretty long break from panels, but I never lost the passion with the idea of having conversations with decent people. Today we have a specially curated group of people who I believe are all capable of having really decent conversations, and we're going to be talking about Ashraf Hakimi, based off of his divorce situation, which kind of sparked conversations around asset management and the different dynamics between asset protection versus prenuptial agreements and marital divide during divorces. And so I'm really excited for everyone who's going to be contributing here. And hopefully they'll be back for future conversations and we'll get to know them on more and more topics until we have a robust understanding of their styles of thinking. And there won't be a whole bunch of, yelling, screaming nonsense, but it'll be a real conversation with real people. Pons today is going to be the host because this topic was too good for me to back off of. So he's going to take it away from here. I guess my thought process is that I think asset protection is not necessarily a sign that you have your foot out of the door, but it seems like an insurance thing. I think in the same sense, you might get a life insurance policy when you're pretty young. It's not a sign that you're saying you hope to die or even expect to die. It's insurance. And I think in the same sense, a lot of times people who have a lot of wealth or even who hope to have a lot of wealth might be approaching things from that perspective. But I don't think it's a matter of having a foot out of the door. Someone really intelligent said you should kind of see people for who they are, not who you want them to be. And I think that was you, by the way, Pons. And I think in reality, you recognize that like marriages, a lot of them end in divorce and nobody goes into a relationship expecting a divorce. So then if that's the case, I could see someone saying, I want to prenup. I want to protect my assets just in case. I can understand it.
Okay. All right. Nico, what do you think?
Yeah, I think asset protection is going to be important for anybody, married or unmarried, considering getting married, engaged, dating, you name it, all across the spectrum. And the reason for that is marriages, while we like to think of them as a permanent endeavor, by no means are they. You could decide to end your marriage or your partner could decide to end your marriage. And once you do, livelihood is going to depend on the assets that you have access to. So protecting them is important, both for men and women. So my answer is yes, most assuredly.
Okay. Erudite?
Yeah, I'm super pro prenup. Problem is there's issues with prenups as well. They're not like an end-all be-all solution in the cases of divorce. I think mediated divorces that end with like the most fair balance, where both partners are concerned with like the longevity and health of each other and their children, I think are the best resolutions. And that is a majority of divorces. The problem is when you get into a divorce where everyone's just trying to get theirs and trying to get as like much as possible out of the relationship, it gets really, really awful and toxic. And prenups can obviously get tossed out or are not encompassing of like assets that later emerge. So they're not perfect. And I think the law court is not fully sufficient for dealing with asset separation in divorces.
Okay. Quickly, is anybody here anti-prenup? Is anybody here against prenups? Okay, so everybody here is pro prenup. Is that safe to say?
I think. Go ahead. There you go.
Yeah, go ahead, Shane.
I won't say pro or like just being completely against it. What I will say is when it comes to the prenups and assets, you need to have them. What I am learning and seeing is a lot of people who are protecting things that they don't necessarily have right now. And I don't know about where, you guys are, but in Detroit, a lot of them are even trying to protect it and not even working towards getting said things. So to just promote prenup with nothing to have a prenup on, no one wants your PlayStation 5 and your Jordans. Like I don't need a prenup for those. So it really depends on the necessity.
Are valuable.
Right. So that's kind of how I feel, but I do believe in them when necessary.
Okay, understood. Okay, so we kind of all agree that they have a need. Does anybody here have a strong feeling or a strong thing that they would say goes against prenups, something that makes them really flawed? Like Erudite, you did mention that prenups are not perfect right now.
I think Shay did a good job explaining why. It's really hard to prenup shit you don't have, right? So if you're 24 and 25 when you get married, and then you start a business later in your marriage and you divorce 15 years into establishing this business, your prenup doesn't account for any of that. It doesn't account for the cars that you buy, the houses. So prenups are great when you're like established and you have income and the other partner doesn't, and there's clear assets beforehand. So like when 30-year-olds get married, it makes a lot more sense. I'm still for prenups for younger people or people without assets, but yeah, it's can't cover you for assets you don't have.
Understood. Okay. Well, since we're all pretty much in the pro section, I would say let's focus on, we all agree that they're not perfect. We all agree that they're needed. What would be one thing that we could see to change to make prenups a little bit more in line with what we need in society right now? Anybody think of some changes, or if you were to rewrite something?
Yeah, so I personally think, to everyone else's point, like you said, prenups aren't perfect, right? So why not revisit the prenup? If you get a prenup in the beginning for whatever reason, you should be able to revisit the prenup and kind of like re-up, right? Maybe once every year, once every 5 years, however long your marriage lasts, right? I'm gonna get on marriage in a second because I got a lot to talk about when it comes to marriage. But if you decide to get married, number one, that should, like, prenup should be, all right, we're already getting the government involved. You have to do a prenup if you get married. We'll talk about that. But every so often, revisit the prenup, be like, I just got a promotion. I just got a, whatever. But let's revisit the prenup. I got more things, you have more things, and you have less things. You got fired, you do not get my money, like, have not. We got to revisit this. So that's what I think.
It's pretty interesting, kind of like renewing the vows kind of thing. Renewing the
I just
prenup.
Renew
I
the
just think
prenup.
Yeah, I think prenups are basically not going to solve most of the asset separation problems that we have, right? For example, the same reason that a couple might not get a prenup, like they have no assets, is also another reason why, for example, they might not have proper legal representation when they're signing the prenup, which that means that prenup can just get tossed out because that's so question of who's married, who has a prenup. I'm married, and we didn't have a prenup because we started talking to lawyers, and we're like, we're both students, we can't afford this, and we don't have it.
Yeah.
What are we going to split? Like, we don't own anything. Like my horse, that was basically the only assets owned between us. So like, yeah,
Those are expensive.
prenups don't solve problems once you've been married for 10 years, 15 years, or just most divorces. You have kids. Prenups are like almost always insufficient, so they're not really the answer for item separation in my mind, asset separation.
I mean, I was just gonna say really quick, like I mean, yeah, I think a lot of us kind of have this mentality in our heads, an inappropriate mentality in our heads that, well, if I signed a prenup before we got married, then now no matter how much money I make throughout the marriage, when we divorce, none of that's gonna none of that. If the prenup was good enough, then they're not gonna get any of that. And I don't. It to my knowledge, it would only really impact the things that were there before you got married, right? Isn't that typically how it works?
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
That's
Yeah.
how it works. However, one, you can absolutely update prenuptial agreements as long as both parties are for updating your prenuptial agreement. So if we started out with nothing and now 4 years later, 2 years later, we had we won a lottery or something like that, that would, if you wanted to update your prenuptial agreement because of how you are now dividing or splitting that asset or whatever you came into, that's fine. But there are also stipulations with them, and you set the stipulations that you want with your prenuptial agreements. And most of the most common ones are, if you cheat or if there's any infidelity and irreconcilable differences, then that will make a prenuptial agreement null and void for spousal support or whatever the case may be. So, like she said, it's not one size fits all. They don't solve all problems. And a caveat to that is picking better partners. Like, get somebody that you really can trust. And if you can't trust them, please understand that it's going to get ugly. That's it.
Mm. But is there such thing as a good enough partner in that situation? To me, it feels like Man, you can go in there no matter what with the best intentions, really feeling like you're choosing somebody, whatever. But I think someone pointed out, like, the person who they are when you get with them is not the person who they are during a divorce. People come increasingly or exceedingly selfish when they realize, I have no more ties to you and I plan to completely cut ties. So now working in our best interest, and most of the time goes out of the window, and there's plenty of bitterness. It just seems like there's no good partner regarding that. It seems, from that's what I would imagine. I'm willing to hear the different.
If you're breaking up, then that's something where, you're no longer a good partner for that person. However, heart placement, and when you are choosing somebody who you're vetting them out when you're dating and courting or whatever it is that you call your process. That's when you find out, or start to pay attention to where the heart placement is more than everything else. And it's certain ideals and certain things that connect you to a person, and it has to be outside of the shiny things, and you can really start to see how a person is the longer that you get to know them, and especially if you've now been with them for quite some time and you see that this person isn't honorable or whatever the case may be. So when it goes south, it was things that led up to that. Some people do pull the wool over your eyes, but it's very seldom that something just happens out of nowhere.
You see, you said something right there that I got to touch on. You talking about you vetting people out, dating them in the dating process. You're vetting them out to be with you. I don't know about you, but I don't vet somebody out and be like, how is this person going to be when we break up? Like, oh, is this person going to be good for me when I break up? They're going to let me keep the house. I don't think who thinks about that? So it's kind of like, to Fanatiq's point, I've never seen, like, I'm married right now. I've never seen how she is in a divorce. And you're not going to see that until you get a divorce. So it's like, you don't know who that person is. You don't know if she's going to go for the throat. You don't know if she's going to try to take your shirt. Like, you don't know that. So to that point, it's like, you can't, all right, you don't know what the person's going to do in the prenuptials, and I don't think it's possible to even agree to change prenuptials. If I'm in a better spot in my life than I was 10 years ago, and she's not going to agree to, like, she's not going to agree to amend the prenuptials. Like, it's just logical fact. Because why would she?
Why wouldn't she be in a better spot if she's your spouse? If you're better, aren't you guys supposed to be elevating and getting better together?
No, that's not like, sometimes in every relationship, there's situations. What if she's a stay-at-home wife, right? She's a stay-at-home wife, just taking care of the kids and everything like that, while I'm out in the world, getting everything that I'm supposed to getting my promotions and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I want, like, she's the only reason why I'm able to get promotions and stuff like that, because she's at home taking care of the kids, right? So it would be in our best interest to kind of amend it to where she gets some more money. But what if somebody else doesn't feel the same way? Because I'm talking about me. These prenuptials and these divorces and everything like that happens to 50% of everyone, in 50% of married couples in US.
My understanding is 10% of marriages in the United States involve a prenuptial agreement. So they're actually quite rare. Most people avoid them.
Yeah, and like, pick the right partner is like, well, humans are about as good as a coin toss at picking the right partner, apparently. And so, like, pick the right partner, I think, is really bad advice. Because people change, things happen. You don't know. Like, I think I'm not sure who said it. Fanatiq or maybe Tone said, you don't know who you are when you have massive negative sentiment override. You're embittered, right? Like, you're not going to be probably your most proud version of yourself in the midst of, like, a really messy divorce. And you're probably going to do shitty things that you would probably otherwise advocate not to do to your soon-to-be ex-spouse. I'm curious what you guys, maybe it would be interesting. What do you guys think about alimony?
Describe alimony for those of us, I don't know who.
Child support.
Who don't understand what it is. Child support.
Yeah, child support.
All right.
I thought that spousal support. Isn't
Right, yeah,
alimony
those are two
spousal
different-
Yeah,
support?
alimony spousal support.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do both.
Okay.
We
Yeah,
can.
they-
I'm meaning
they're
putting
usually-
in afterwards because I think that's where the spice will come out in this
Yeah,
conversation.
they usually go hand in hand in a divorce that
Yeah.
have children involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just give a quick take. So my thing is this. I think alimony makes all the sense in the world, right? I do believe in the idea, like they've always said, you find a good man, like a good married man, and you'll find a good woman that's supporting that married man, right? And ultimately, I look at it like if I'm able to, I'm going to be a lot more effective as a man if I have a great support system at home, right? Men who are married live longer, like 8 years. I want to say they have like an 8 years longer lifespan. You having someone that's there to help manage children, manage your diet, like eating, right? Like we look at the shows, amazing shows like The Cosby Show. Remember how Claire Huxtable was constantly on his helmet about like, nope, you're not eating that, right? Like those kinds of things, because men tend to be significantly more reckless. I think women really enhance in those kind of things. So I would say that wives are going to be supportive. And so then if she's been staying at home and like making the home and like managing all of these things and managing the children while you're making the money, to then just say, okay, by the way, I'm retiring, or we're separating, but she's had none of this work experience, which is like a huge determining factor on what your income is going to be. Then to just say, I'm sorry, you're high and dry, just doesn't seem realistic. That's as far as alimony is concerned. I don't know how you can just say, look, you just figure it out, get into the workforce, start from ground zero. I've put in all this time. You've put in this time with me, supporting me. But now you're just kind of on. That just sounds crazy to me. So I think alimony makes all the sense in the world in that capacity.
Can I ask you a question? Let me ask you a question, Fanatiq. I think, so I'd agree that it does make sense. I certainly wouldn't say it makes all the sense in the world. Let me ask you this. What type of time frame post-divorce do you think makes a lot of sense for alimony? 4 months, 36, 48, 60, 72? What kind of time frame are we looking at?
Well, how long has she been out? How long has she been out of work, sacrificing day in and day out so that way her husband can do what he was doing? While
Let's say they
holding
were married.
being everything's. So I
That
like,
is a lot.
you know what I mean? Like, was it 15 years she was raising these kids?
Let's say
18
10.
years?
Let's say they were married for 10 years. All 10 years, she was a stay-at-home mom with the kids. She did not work at all. How long do you think post-divorce should alimony last?
Well, I did some research on this, and they said alimony's half the marriage. Half the marriage. So if y'all was married for 10 years, you're supposed to support her for 5 years. 5 years, get your shit together. That's what they say. So
That doesn't sound bad. That sounds reasonable to
That
me.
don't sound bad.
Sure.
I was gonna say 1-to-1, but I think half sounds even better. To me, yeah, I think
Okay,
5 sounds good for a 10-year. Sure.
because
I think
I'm gonna just say this, right? If I may, you're
Mhm.
stay-at-home mom for 10 years. We are in the internet era. Open up a Mercari, open up an eBay store. Like there's things you could do while taking care of the kids as well. You're not taking care of the kids for the whole 8 hours that I'm at work, for the whole 24 hours. Like, all right, go on something and learn, pick up a skill. For 10 years, you telling me that you're just taking care of the kids, making a house, and then that's it?
Well, a lot of times,
No,
like
to
women
that-
will be
to your
doing
point-
house care, but also like supporting in the work, right? So say like you do some sort of like work, like a lot of like men do like entrepreneur and side hustle. So a lot of time, like women will be doing like these small side hustles or working under their husband, not getting paid to just like help support him in her job that she's probably not getting paid for at all, and probably isn't a skill set that she maybe like want to use elsewhere. Like she starts like an Etsy store to bring in a little bit of extra cash, but like that's not her career, nor is it good training for the future career she might need after the divorce.
No, in
Yeah.
response to both of you, I'd say that just, I've tried being at-home dad of sorts and trying to pursue different things, like whether it be YouTube and editing and recording or online business, e-commerce. And I personally find it near impossible to gain any sort of traction or have success with children at home in like a small business. Or now, if you're talking children that are school aged, you have to understand they're not at home. Like they're literally not at home. You take them to school. So that's one thing. But if you're talking children that are schooling age, age of 4 and below, and if you have one child, it could be multiple children. I personally found it near impossible. That may just be me. Other people are better at multitasking. So I will come to a stay-at-home person's defense in that regard. I think as far as alimony, I think 1-to-1 for the length of marriage is crazy. Like that's that. Oh, well, I'll say this: it can be 1-to-1 so long as the marriage was 5 years or less. Anything above 5 years, I think 1-to-1 is extensive, and certainly too long. Even I'd say half the marriage. I mean, if they're married for 20 years, and now you're gonna tell whoever the primary financial provider was for the family, man or woman, you're going to tell them, hey, as a divorce, as of now, you're both 50 years old. By the way, for the next 10 years until you're 60, you have to provide for this person's living expenses. To me, that's extensive.
But just to be clear, that 10 years of spousal support is only if she decides. I mean, it's only as long as she doesn't cohabit with another person, get married to another person, etc. And I would imagine, now I don't know this because this is not my area of expertise. I would imagine if she starts making enough money to where she's out earning her husband, they could probably revisit that. Is that what? That just sounds logical. Is that how that works?
I mean, that's how that could work. It's not how
That's how
it
it works.
necessarily works, but it could work that way. I mean, it depends. I mean, if I'm married to someone who has, we'll say middle class to upper middle class income, and so then after we divorce, I receive alimony that's commensurate with that upper middle class income, then I don't know that. I mean, it's kind of nice to sit at home and collect checks. Now, I'm not accusing a divorcee to just want to do that, but if the court is telling you, hey, this is what you're entitled to. You will collect this amount of money every month, and this covers your living expenses, and you effectively don't have to work. I don't know what type of person will say, thanks, I'll go flip burgers at McDonald's, but thank you for the offer. Like, no thanks, I'll go take out, I'll be a garbage man or woman or whatever. So, I mean, but like you said, it could go that way. It depends.
I don't think it does. I'm gonna tell you why. Because it, like you said, it makes no sense. It gives people no incentive to go out and work, right? It gives people no incentive to get remarried. If I could just stay how I am and just, be in a relationship with somebody else and still get paid by the government because I was with somebody for however many years I was with somebody, why would I want to mess that up and go get married to somebody else? Like, we saw this during COVID when the government was handing out crazy checks to just stay at home because of how everything was, and people just decided not to go back to work. I get $2,000 a week just to stay at home, and I don't have to go to give me the money. Like, we've seen this before. So
I think we have to be careful to not apply game theory to people, particularly in relationships, right? Like, we always try to assume that people are going to act the most rationally way possible to maximize their monetary gain. But the reality is, like, if you look at people's purchasing histories, we know that that's not true and that people are stupid. I don't know how realistic it is that a woman would prevent herself from moving in with a new partner and establishing like a long-term relationship with him just so that she can pull another 2 years of alimony off of you. That seems very, while it maybe makes sense from a game theory lens, it seems to fly in the face of everything I see people making decisions for relationally, which is their feelings.
Well, let me ask you this here, that what, for example, when you say you can't see a woman necessarily doing that, moving in with somebody or preventing herself from moving in so that she can continue to collect, right? So define moving in. And what I mean by that is this. I know so many couples, and even myself, when I was in a relationship, my fiance and I lived in the same city, had her own apartment, I had my own house. So 5 nights a week, she was at my house. A couple nights a week, I was at her house, and vice versa, back and forth. So if you've been married for 20, 15 years, maybe you're 50, 55 years old. I mean, there are some people who are looking to get married and kind of go that traditional route, get married, wedding, altar, move into to a house together. But what percentage of 55-year-olds are necessarily looking for that? And I don't know the numbers. I'm not claiming to know the numbers, but I'm saying, look, people have, and they may have children, and they may not want to blend their lives totally, and having a monthly income, alimony that you don't have to earn, coming to you, and all you've got to do is figure out a way to continue the relate or be satisfied enough with the relationship to not move in together. I mean,
But
Mike,
that's
I guess
easy to do. Why would you move in?
let me ask. something, because we're speaking on alimony as if it's paid out at 100%. So the person who is responsible for said alimony is just not getting any paycheck at all. It's going to be a dividend, a portion of whatever that they're receiving, which means that it's still going to be lower than what they were used to when they
Right.
were in this marriage or the relationship.
Hmm.
So that's not, a lot of times it's still not going, the need is not going to be met. Now you do have, that's how welfare was born, where people just don't want to get up and get a job or whatever the case may be. But in terms of alimony, depending on like what exactly your relationship or the bread earner was bringing in, absolutely has to do with the sustainability as well. You know what I mean? Like alimony
But
for
yeah,
a salary that's 36, 45, 55, K a year. That's not, you know what I mean? Like I
I
still
completely
don't have
under.
to work.
Yeah, no, I completely understand what you're. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that.
You're good.
What's the last thing you said,
No,
Shay?
I'm saying I said I'm still going to have to work. They're not a substantial change in alimony. It is not going to be able to hit every marker for the lifestyle. It can pay
Sure,
mortgage, or but if we don't have a mortgage, we just have property taxes. You know what I mean?
sure.
So
I understand. I completely understand where you're coming from. Completely understand where you're coming from. But on the other side of the coin, you have to understand if I'm making $50,000 a year, example, and then I have to pay alimony totaling maybe $10,000 or $15,000 a year. That $10,000 or $15,000 a year may not be enough to sustain the person who's receiving it. May not be enough to retain their lifestyle. But you have to understand, I'm now a $35,000 a year earner. It's just shakum, gone, out of my pocket, out of my household. It's not for me to be able to touch or use in any way, shape, or form. So while $10,000 or $15,000 is not necessarily a lot at all to sustain a person's lifestyle or a household, you have to understand the other person's probably going to have to figure out some other form of income as well, just to make ends meet. Obviously,
If
depending
I
on how
so,
much they make, but
if I
it's subtracting that from their household as well. So keep that in mind.
I I just want to say really quickly, I looked it up, and it seems like only about 12% of divorced adults receive spousal support. And I would imagine that's because a lot more women are working, and most households are no longer like single people households. And I also looked it up, and it does say that if the recipient of alimony starts earning a earning a decent income, then it can be renegotiated or even terminated. So it seems, again, it just seems kind of realistic to me. I wanted to interject earlier when you were saying that they didn't earn. And I promise I'm not trying to be some simp nigga, but it's just like fact is you earn that by doing, like, by being the supportive person within the relationship, right? Like it's not it almost looks like a maybe like a pension, right? A pension is earned, and so then to like kind of frame it as like, oh, there's just money somebody. It's not to just overly focus on that, but just I do think that it's earned. And then lastly, I would say that it it sounds. I remember this really funny story on Reddit, or it was an image, and it was on Reddit, and it was a guy that had divorced his wife, and she was collecting alimony, and he put on the alimony checks that he was sending to her, he had remarried, and he had put a picture of him and his new wife, and that was the
Yeah.
background image for the checks for the alimony he was sending, which is just grimy, you know. I mean, somewhat
Yeah.
grimy,
Petty,
yeah,
petty,
understandable.
Petty.
Yeah, that's really petty. I
petty
respect it
nigga. I
though.
do that shit.
I would do it too.
I'm a petty nigga.
Think this is why it boils down. You really got to be careful who your partner is going to be, who your partner in life is going to be. Communication, finances, those are top two reasons and things you guys should be 100% talking about. Boundaries, expectations, through the financing and all that should be already discussed before you're tying the knot and all of that.
Hmm.
What the expectation is later on, if it is a divorce, like, and I know a lot of people don't want to touch on that because they're like, why are we even trying to kill the relationship before it already starts? But if you are an actual mature adult who's like trying to think about everyone's future, And communication has to happen between all of these topics. It's just the
That's what
tough
I was.
conversations have to happen.
That's what I meant when I was saying choosing good partners, not oh, you just know who's gonna be and how you're gonna be. But when it comes to like where we are at our big ages right now, we have a core. So taking the time out to recognize who we are and who we're trying to be with and what we're doing, and does this person have potential to grow? Will I be able to love you in your next phase? Will you be able to love me in my next phase? Because we're not going to stay the same. Evolution
True.
is ongoing, or should be ongoing.
It should be.
I think we've kind of slowly, actually, without me even talking about the other questions, we kind of really hit on most of the topics.
Everything.
We're kind of hitting everything. So I think this is all kind of starting to evolve a little bit. So I'll ask and we can kind of go around. We talked about how alimony isn't really the best fix, but it's definitely good. Child support isn't really the best fix, but it's pretty good. Prenups aren't really the best fix, they're pretty good. Are all these just like the band-aid fixes and the problem is just bad personal choices? Is that what this is all really is the issue? Because I hear everybody saying, well, it sounds like you're picking the wrong partners, you're going to the wrong places, you're expecting the wrong things out of people, you have unrealistic expectations from the relationship. Does this all really just come down to poor choices? Fanatiq?
Oh yeah.
Anger makes people ugly. And depending on, and I promise I won't go all the way there, but I'll tap it a little bit. Depending on the
Go
soul
all the way there.
Where we going?
type.
Let's go.
Depending on like I say, the heart placement, there are certain things that may not even be revealed until you are pushed into a certain arena. And I'm not saying that, it's acceptable or anything like that, but this is why I need to know what you're like when you're angry. How you handle me in those type of moments will show me in the future if things go left, at least a synopsis. So, when if the relationship were to end, then you kind of have to start armoring yourself up for what could potentially be a battle, especially if now you know that you haven't collided your life with someone who's healed. Because someone who is just in full wholeness, they breaking up or whatever, if we don't work out, I'm not going to have any ill will towards you. I'm not going to have any malice. I don't care. As long I want my fairness. I want my portion. And if I want to be done, I want to be done. I do not want to hurt you. I do not care about you and your next anything. If you want to send me a check with you and baby girl on it, I'm going to take it to the bank and I'm going straight to Amazon.
So I think when we talk about personal choice, there's vetting your partner, which is kind of what Shay is talking about. And that does something. You should vet your partners, right? There's some marriages that dissolve in a way where you're like, yeah, saw that one coming. Like you married a rage case, not surprising that they tried to destroy your life. The problem is that I think the actual part of choice that happens is what happens after you get married, what happens after your relationship is established, which is where people settle, they stop trying, they stop being active for each other, and both partners do this. I'm definitely not against no-fault divorce. I think no-fault divorce is like one of the safest things to allow abused people to get out of relationships. The problem is that I think a lot of marriages end in divorce that probably never needed to. It's just both people consistently and actively chose every single day to wake up, to have fights over domestic economy, to have bitterness, to not address the problems, and both of them to stop trying, right? Both of them not like humbling themselves and like working on the relationship. So like, I don't think you can perfectly pick a partner to ensure that if you get divorced, it'll be a nice, clean, happy divorce. But I think what you do pick is what your relationship looks like throughout the duration of your relationship. I think a lot of divorces occur that probably don't need to, and is a result of people getting lazy and honestly becoming shitty partners. Both of them, not one or the other.
Yeah.
I'm 1,000,000,000% in agreement with that. And I think, I think maybe culturally, if we want to take it to the people where this kind of conversation started from, which was Ashraf Hakimi. Like, I feel like those type of relationships, the relationships around the wealthy and the elite, those relationships tend to, it seems like they always end in divorces. I was saying last night that I feel like a lot of those people, they treat marriages like the dating process. Like, I like this person, I'm going to marry them and kind of see where it goes. And so then, of course, those relationships aren't going to be super duper long lasting. I think Hollywood and just being elite in general, and like the amount of temptation you're dealing with, and just the strain that stuff puts on a relationship, already like makes it more likely to divorce. I think the vacuousness of some of the women who are literally in these situations going after dudes who just have a whole bunch of money, I think that can create it as well. I think dudes having that amount of money and their inability to like be faithful to women, I think that kind of creates. So I feel like in reality, like, yeah, I mean, again, you can do all your vetting you want to, but I would imagine when you get into those kind of things where it almost feels impossible to vet. And I was going to ask Dominique, since you were like a person that was like in the NFL, and there's obviously going to be large amounts of money that's like surrounding you and all those kinds of things. Um, I'm already sure that like prenup was like a guarantee. There's no way I'm working without a prenup in any type of marriage situation. I would imagine if you're around that type of money. How do you get to the point? Do you think that it was realistic to try to vet if a person was truly interested in you, or if they would be interested in your money?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say unlikely. Well, first off, Dominic is my middle name.
Okay.
So no, but you're all good. That's what my mom calls me, so I'll respond to it. But so I think when you're dealing with meeting a person post success, and this is across any field, whether you're already a physician, whether you're already an NFL player, et cetera, et cetera. I think the vetting process can be more difficult. It isn't always necessarily, but the likelihood that you'll find someone who's genuinely interested in you and who wants to date you for you, be with you for you, and not be with you for what you can give to them exclusively, or not what you can give to them primarily, I think it's hard. It's difficult, it's challenging, because there are a lot of assets that come along with somebody of high status. For example, professional athletes, yes, of which I was. You are dealing with not only money, you're also dealing with status. You're also dealing with fame, recognition. Those things are important to certain people. And so a lot of times they'll try and pick their significant other based on how much of those things they have to offer. So I think that prenuptial agreements were common. They were talked about often. I remember when I was a rookie, and this was just mercy. When I was a rookie with the Pittsburgh Steelers, we had multiple seminars where we had a NFL veteran come in, kind of close the door, turn off the cameras, nobody recording. Let's have a man-to-man discussion about, okay. And the rhetoric was kind of like, look, if you get married, make sure that your side pieces are solid. That was kind of the rhetoric, because it's like they're gonna be there, man. You travel to the same cities every year, twice a year, whatever the case may be. So like, when you get them and when they come, just make sure that they don't home wreck what you got going on at home. And those types of things, I mean, very common, very common.
Damn.
Wow.
That's crazy. I'm curious what you guys think about this. I suspect a lot of people that get married in large part where like money is a central focus for both partners. So maybe he's like entrepreneurial and big on like that hustle culture, and she's attracted to him because he's making lots of money. I feel like those are the marriages where like the money fights probably become some of the most explosive, because like the central thing that's actually the relationship is the money. And I don't know. When I see these types of relationships, when the divorces are messy, this feels like an inevitability because the value is always money. Which I'm curious if maybe that occurs more often in like rich, like affluent spaces. Yeah, curious your guys' thoughts.
I think, yeah, that's exactly what I was alluding to, is that, when someone is wealthy or has influence or affluence, you can't go on a date with that person and pretend like it doesn't exist. Like, imagine if you're a lady or who Brad Pitt wants to take you out, right? Like, you can't pretend that you don't know who he is and what he's worth. And you can't pretend like it doesn't matter to you, although there is a small percentage of people who it won't matter to. So, I mean, absolutely, I think, and that's why you see, kind of like Fanatiq said, some of those some of these issues that that are made public and make the headlines of news, they exist there. These are wealthy people, upper class people with a lot of money, and perhaps the pool of people who they were looking to marry, or kind of pulling from when they're looking to get into a relationship, are not necessarily, on a scale of averages, the most genuine people you could date or marry, I would
That's
imagine.
the
So
case. Then, when that's the case, and I'm not surprised, I don't feel sorry, and there is no argument. Like, when you are fundamentally starting off wrong and you end wrong, that's it. And in those it happens a lot in those type of situations. And if we want to circle back and make it more, regular, have it hit home for us, this is, kind of the thing that you watch out for until you have to go through it yourself, kind of thing. Um, I don't care if you're a celebrity or not. If you have the $1 billion baby, like, you're still going to have some type of core. Like, it has to be intact, or this is what you end up with. So when you are being sued for half of everything or more because you superficially made decisions based on status and all of that other stuff that wasn't important, then here we are.
Well, speaking of all that, uh, we got a situation that perfectly fits in with everything we're talking about right now. Is the topic of this show is this Ashraf Hakimi person. And you were all linked an article. I'm reading into it a little bit here. So apparently the idea is that this person is being divorced by their wife because they were allegedly abusing young girls in Paris. Only for the wife to find out that this person's wealth is in their mother's name. The person put their entire fortune in their mother's name. So, of course, the wife is going to have a difficult time getting it. Now she's suing him. So, was that a legal play? What do we think? Was that fair game, or was that too far? Was that we don't think we should be able to do that? What do you think, Nico?
oh man, well, I'm hesitant to speak on whether or the morality of it.
Sure.
But I'll say this: I think there's a reason why he did it. And there's a reason why people do a lot of things. I'm not justifying his actions just because there was a reason why he did it. But I think that he was interested in protecting those assets from her. Um, it's hard to tell. It's hard to state whether, it was wrong or it was right. But I'll say this: I'm not opposed to someone making a move like that. I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I believe, there are circumstances where it's probably wrong or not best. I don't know that this is one of them. I mean, well played, clever, very clever, man.
I'm gonna do you
Checkmate,
one.
honestly.
I'm gonna do you one better. I don't even think it was his idea. I think it was his mother's idea. She's like, she was in his ear, like, I see that girl over there. You better put everything in my name. Like, mothers know. Mothers know. So that was definitely like, he got to break her off. Maybe what was she trying to get? Like half of everything. If he made $70 million, she was trying to get $35 million. He got to break his mom off with a cool 20. Cool 20 million, something like that. Got to.
This goes
Man,
back
that would be
to
an
know
interesting
your
twist.
person. Vet and know your person. That goes back to what the ladies were saying from the very beginning, because obviously he didn't know who he was dealing with. His mom did, you're saying, basically. She's the one
His
who
mom did.
meditated all of this, but he didn't. So it just still boils down to get to know your person. Take the time out. It's so many, it's like you said, we're saying about the celebrities, it's so many rushed relationships. It's just attraction, head over heels, but no one's talking about the real life situations that are going to make or break a person or a relationship. This is one of those. Like, he was, I think you said earlier,
19.
Yeah, he was very young and she was much, much older. So
Very old.
obviously the mom is already catching on, like, this is not okay. But at the same time, as in her defense, we really don't know her standpoint on any of it all, you know what I mean? So it's still something that he did I wouldn't say maliciously or anything, but you knew what you were doing when you were trying to hide it. And so that kind of leaves it up for like, we got to be fair on both ends. Would he have liked that done to him? Treat people how you want to be treated is what I'm saying. No one's doing that, by the way.
The know your person thing, I agree with it, but I don't really agree with it, because how many times are we in a relationship with rose-colored glasses and all of our friends, all of our families, like, you know that person right there? It's not for you. And you're like, man, shut up. Go do you. Go do you. We're doing us over here. And then what? Couple months later, we broke up. They're breaking our shit. They're breaking our PlayStation 5, threw it in the bathtub. I saw those videos. I saw those pictures. Like, and then we go back to the person, like, you know what? You were right about that. But like, yeah, I was right. But rose-colored glasses make you can't see the red flags when you're wearing rose-colored glasses.
Sounds like
You know what? But I think that's what Shireen was maybe alluding to, is like, take off the rose-colored glasses. Like, if you get into a relationship, like, take them off, regardless of how great you think this person is. Take a step back and reanalyze. And again, that certainly, in my opinion, you know, that certainly doesn't cover everything. You're definitely not going to catch everything that this person is going to become, even that you're going to become in marriage. But you can do a lot. You can cover a lot of bases if you take off the, rose-colored glasses, so to speak.
Hard. That's hard.
It's very hard, man.
But it's necessary when you are really trying to date, because who wants to stay in like this infatuation phase like permanently? We are too old to continuously be deceived in every relationship that we are in or that we get into, and it's only so much that we can do without taking accountability of the type of dating cycles that we get into, and the type of people that we are attracted to. And if you are attracted to like some form of dysfunction, then you might need to tap in a little bit with yourself and cut all off, so you can now start to recalibrate your dating, because those rose-colored glasses are only going to take you so far as an excuse. No, it's a no for me. As far as him,
it's a tough one. But it sounds like there's pretty good consensus here. I think we'd all say that. Let me ask you this, just a straight question with this person, Ashraf Hakimi. Should they, with what we know, of course, there could be extra information that we don't know that comes out later. Was that an okay move? Was that he did the right thing? We would all say, yes, that's perfectly within his purview, or no?
No.
It's toxic, but it was the right move. Sometimes toxicity is the right move.
It was a good move for him. I agree to that. But was it the right move as a human being, being grimy to somebody else or dishonest to somebody else? Absolutely not.
I think it's complicated.
I agree that it was grimy.
Yeah, they have 2 kids. They were married for 2 years, and he's been accused of sexually assaulting a young girl. Right? Those are like all of the details around this divorce that are like probably relevant to whether or not it's worthwhile. It's definitely a gray area. I don't know where I fall on this one. Because to some extent, I know that a lot of like specifically like sports players can get really, really screwed over with women. I'm sure you can speak to this, with women marrying them, trying to get some kids out of them, and then trying to like then divorcing them within like 2 years and like trying to get as much money from them that you can. Right? There's quotes of her saying things like, "I don't care about material goods," but she's also asking for 10 million and rejected the 2 million that he offered her. Right? So it's like, how true is that? And also, what's our child support look like? I also have no idea, like, if he's going to be paying massive child support for the rest of, until the oldest, I think, is out of school or whatever. That would also change whether or not I feel like what he did is bad or good. So I don't have enough of these details, but I think, like, all of these details are pretty relevant.
I think what you just said, like, really kind of points out, and I hadn't thought about that until literally right now. So thank you for that. I would say specifically because of the absolutely absurd amount of child support, I think it's absolutely the right move. And here's why. If you know, like, child support is actually absolutely absurd. If I'm making, like, at this point, I think they said he was making about £1 million per month. We don't know if that's going to continue forever, but like, that's how much he's making. And so then if she's entitled to some ludicrous amount, like, £300,000 per month, or some, you know what I'm saying, some sort of nonsense like that, then it's like, wait, yeah, no, I want to keep every penny, because I think that's an absurd amount of money.
Yeah, like what you need extra money for?
You don't. You don't. I get they make the philosophy that the idea is that the woman should be able to maintain the lifestyle that's like the same as what the husband is, right? But in reality, 9 times out of 10, they're not maintaining that lifestyle. You look at like the way Khalees like was taking Nas for all that amount of money, and then literally the like less than 6 months after those payments ended, then it was like, oh, by the way, I'm broke. Or maybe it wasn't Khalees, maybe it was his other baby mama, but I thought it was Khalees. Like, but whoever it was, 6 months. Okay, yeah, right after they like those payments ended, it's like, oh, by the way, I'm flat broke. And it's like, wait, you were clocking in something like $200,000 a month. How did you go broke? How does that happen? So I think, and I mean, I get that happens to everybody. It happens to people in the NFL, happens to people in the NBA, it happens to like just people who inherit a lot of money, all the lottery winners, not all, but a lot. So I get money management is difficult, but it just seems like that number is so absurd that it makes me feel justified in the idea of withholding that money.
So, one, no. So I'm gonna go off of what has been public record and just off of what I believe, because we're just talking about our opinion. So, one, he is about to be on trial for whatever this molestation case is going. So, by happenstance, they both have legal representation right now. You have to take that in consideration. He's innocent until proven guilty, but if he's proven guilty, then what? You know what I mean? And you're in prison. I don't know what your mother is going to do, so and so and so. Like, children still need to be taken care of. That's one. But two, for her, she made a decent amount of money as well. And with him saying that he didn't have anything but an Audi that was gifted to him, made him in turn eligible to receive support from her, because she is she's a movie star. She's a whatever their
breadwinner.
Whatever. Yeah. So that is the grimy portion of it all, and that is the problem. It would be a difference if he didn't have any money, and I would be like, oh well, sorry sis, you do owe some type of spousal support so he can maintain the lifestyle or a portion of the lifestyle that you had when you were together. However, you're a millionaire, she's not too far off, and you're hiding your money under your mother, and you still want to kind of stick it to your soon-to-be ex-wife. That's weak as hell.
I think something that I'll just kind of throw in there, something that I think is important to remember, and it's tough when it comes to all this legal stuff, because we kind of use the state to fill in our, what we're looking for like justice, or sometimes a little bit of revenge. And it's important to remember that when we're talking about things like alimony and child support, they all have very, very hyper specific requirements, and they're for a very specific thing. When we're talking about alimony, it's not, oh well, this dude is a criminal, so we're going to give more alimony to the wife because screw this guy. That's not what alimony is. And I'm not saying anybody's saying that, but it's just important to remember that it's difficult too, especially in a situation like this where we're looking at a person who is a criminal for something that we all agree is really, really gross. It's hard to detach that and say, okay, well,
I think he's still
that's all
he's
true,
still
but
alleged.
I don't think he's been found.
Or is alleged.
Sorry, alleged. I apologize. The alleged crimes.
If he did it, he's trash.
Right. It's something that we would say the allegations are gross.
Well, the issue is just because he's a piece of shit person, it doesn't mean that we like now change our principles.
Right.
Exactly. That's the point.
That's the
right?
issue.
And it just doesn't change what alimony's for either, right? Like alimony is going to be for the same thing. It's while you were married, the woman, I'm assuming this is what alimony's for, is while you're married, the woman would have been here without you. And we're going to kind of give her a little bit of money to help her catch up to where she would have been if you guys had never been married in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think the concept that we say women should be given enough money to maintain the lifestyle she had before is actually a little bit cringe to me. I've actually been always kind of opposed to that. I think that there should be a minimum standard that is offered, right? So if they're both living in poverty, obviously I'm not going to be and she must get middle class. But I don't think that just because you're in the upper percentile because of your husband's earnings, that you should be allowed to maintain that. The reality is, like, I think that honestly the standard should be like more or less what the average middle class is in your country that you're getting married and divorced in. I don't really understand this concept. Like, girl doesn't need to be going on like 16 vacations and like going on ski trips all the time to like maintain a quality of life and raise good and healthy kids. And so like that to me is like part of the issue in all of this is like, I can understand why he's motivated to hide his money because his child payments are going to be so large to maintain the quality of life. But if for example, the child payments were more reasonable to maintain a more reasonable quality of life that more people can have, then him hiding the money is problematic to me. But I understand like there's like this gap in the law that at least I see.
But you're hiding the money from this also predator that you chose.
What?
You chose her. So now you want to hide the money, or you want to like your get out of jail free card for the poor decision you knew you were making when you married her.
But he was 19 years old. But he was 19 years old when he started dating her. And there's no way we would not have the same argument if he was a young woman and he ended up like the young girl who's dating Leonardo DiCaprio. In fact, even when we look at like the recent like nonsense that happened with R. Kelly. Now, mind you, I don't cape for that dude at all. I think he should be thrown under prison. I seen that tape when I was 15 years old. It was gross. But I'm saying like when you
watched it?
I did. I was a child. I downloaded it on Kazaa. I sure did.
Across the board.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I did. It's crazy. It sure was. It was.
Place.
Yeah, it was on Kazaa and LimeWire. They had it there, and I sure did look that up. I sure did. Listen, it was years ago. I'm gonna be honest with you.
2000s.
Yep.
Very
it was
different place.
It sure was, and that was crazy.
Wild shit.
It was just floating there. And I remember when they first made the statement that hey, any person in possession of this, you're in possession of child porn. And I was like, I'm a little kid, but that's what was happening because that was what happened. So my point being, I remember. So we all saw that, right? And that was heinous. But this later stuff, these were 18-year-old girls. They were all adults. And they were living in his house, and they were saying that he was running a harem, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody's making the argument. I don't think most people were making the argument saying, hey, they chose him or they chose to be manipulated in this way, et cetera. I think in most of it, it was just like, yeah, but he still had a relative amount of power. There was a relative amount of abuse that could be happening in these situations. And I think we should look at her in the exact same way. You preyed on a 19-year-old boy in contact with way more money than most people will ever see in their entire lifetime, and you were 31 years old, and then you ended up dating this person, marrying this person. Like the idea that you would have access to all of that, it just seems like we should be able to hold her accountable the same way we would hold a man.
That's true. Also one thing.
Tones and then shaken.
Also one thing that you guys brought up. All of the examples that we brought up about this, like to our lives, was a man who makes more money than a woman who doesn't make any money. I think someone brought up the fact that she's like almost making the same bag that he's making. So why?
Let me clarify real quick. Okay? Yeah. She has a net worth of about $3 million, right? $3 million from her acting career, which is a substantial amount of money, more than most of us will see. So like it's a substantial amount of money, but he was making about $1 million per month. So he has a month. Yeah, and he has a net worth of 70, but now she has a net worth of 3 million. So they're not making the same, but she's making a large amount of money, such that she will be 100% okay with no child support and no alimony. Not saying that she doesn't deserve any. Right.
That's right. Like she ain't broke. She's not gonna be living in the fucking YMCA eating fucking PB&J sandwiches or something like that. Like that's what I'm saying. Like yeah, let me put my money in my mom's name so they don't fucking stick me up in the courthouse, because you can make go casting calls, do something. Like that's what you have a skill. All these other like everybody, and this is not just for like a man making more money than a woman. This is also for a woman making more money than a man. I'm like Kelly Clarkson's situation where she's has to pay alimony to her husband. Go get it. Like you have skills too. So I'm not Mr. Sexist or anything like that, or Mr. Misogynist. It goes both ways. If you have a skill and you have making a substantial, because $3 million a year is a substantial amount of money. I would assume it's more than anyone on this panel is making. I would only assume. So
the issue with that is just like how we can't change alimony laws because we think he's a bag of crap for like potentially like sexually assaulting girls. We can't change the alimony laws just because they're both rich, right? Like it can't be something like, oh, you're too rich. Sorry, no more alimony laws that apply to you.
Well, I'm not trying to change the alimony laws. I'm saying that if this is a moral thing where he's putting the money in his mom's name, and it's not like she doesn't have any money. Like that's the thing. If she was dirt poor and he picked her up off the street or something like that, and he put all his money in his mom's name just to save his money, if in the fact they get divorced or something like that, I think it would be a different situation. That's what I'm saying.
The purpose of alimony is to basically repay the spouse who spent most of the time sacrificing their career for child rearing, right? That's going to be one of the main purposes. It's the reason why like I'm a little bit uncertain how I feel about alimony in cases where there is no children, unless it's clear the woman was working for free for her husband or some sort of situation like that, where obviously alimony would make sense. So in the case like when we're talking about alimony here, we're talking about basically, I suspect that it's decently likely that she sacrificed part of her acting time to be at home with the kids. They probably also had a nanny, so it's probably still less here. But if she does have like measurable amounts of like lost wages as a result of doing home care, I do think that some level of like balancing is required there, because he's probably getting maximal access for his sports. You only have a couple of years to perform anyways, right? So he's probably working as much as possible, and she's probably picking up the slack with the kids to allow him to do that.
Well, that has to go to court. That's decided in court, right? And someone said that. Go ahead.
But that's the reason to go to court. Now, anything like excessive, like I'm not caping or wouldn't cape for her to just take all of his assets and everything that he's worked for, but to say just because she has it, so basically take care of your children by yourself because you can afford it.
Well, no, but didn't you just say before, since he has no assets, that if going to court, she would have to pay him alimony? But then that kind of negates what Erudite say.
That's what he's doing. No, I brought that up because that's what he's doing.
How you know that's what he's doing?
That's what, allegedly, that's what his mother has all the things, so he has nothing in his name. So by law, if he works, he would be able to counter her for spousal support because she will be considered the breadwinner of that family or in that relationship. That's the only reason that I brought that.
20% of his assets is in his name, so I don't think that would be the case. His mom only has 80% of his assets.
Wait, no. That's not accurate. It's only 20% of his income, because all of the actual, the rest of the assets, as far as like the houses, the cars, the clothes, the jewelry, all of that was in his mother's name. It's just that 20% of his income he would keep in the other 80%. And I would imagine that they were living on that 20%. So even that 20% isn't still there anymore. A lot of that has probably been spent.
Okay.
That's what seemed very to me.
He's confidently hiding his assets.
That boy clever, man. That boy clever.
But really quick, before just one more thing I want to say is, I was just gonna say really quick. I think it's absolutely immoral for him to take the money. If he's able to get any percentage of her assets, you already did the clever thing and won by putting aside the money and keeping the majority of your bag. To then take some of her money in that situation, that makes you a scumbag. And this is the mother of your children. There's no way you're sending a good message there. The same way I think like people who get people for crazy amounts of child support and all that kind of stuff. Nicole Brown Simpson getting them for like $250,000 a month back in like 92. That was nuts. And I could see why those kind of people do crazy things. So I'm just saying, I think that's savage. He should deny any money that's owed to him if they're trying to get into her personal wealth, considering he knows that he is more than taken care of. But I'm just saying it was a really smart thing for him to put that money aside. That being said.
Does it
I agree.
at this point, then?
If he could.
Go ahead, Shireen. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was saying, so because I know, Fanatiq, you mentioned earlier about age, like, well, he's only 18 or 19 or something like that, right? Did that matter? Because if he was able to calculate or be in cahoots with his mother and had that much brains and intentionality and all of this, he wasn't ready to get married. He didn't have the mental capacity because he was an adolescent to, you know what I mean? Like, but you're doing all this other shady stuff.
So I'm gonna rely on what Tone said.
Back to what she was saying, you can't bend the laws. It goes for all ages as long as you're 18 and, doing adult stuff.
See, I'm agree with what Tone said. I believe the mom probably, I don't know about probably. It's very possible that the mother was the one that came up with this kind of plan. And so it still would be predatory in my mind. And I don't think just being like cognizant and aware of like how to manage or even like how to protect your money in some sort of way, like you could have just seen a YouTube video that explained this thing and learned how to do that. Like, I don't know that means he's definitely old enough to have been recognizing that this 31-year-old woman could possibly be a predator. I don't know. It's hard for me to say that. I don't know.
To that point, I will just add that, I understand that when into their relationship, he was 19, she was 31, but I don't think the ages in and of themselves is enough to say that she was predatory. I don't think that's fair. I understand the age gap. I think it's relevant. I think it's worth a discussion for sure, but a 19-year-old is an adult as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not saying that they would make, if you compare the average 19-year-old's life decisions to the average 27 or 30-year-old's life decisions, I would imagine that the 27 to 30-year-old people would make better choices overall. But at the same time, that does not excuse the 19-year-old, male or female, living with the consequences of their decisions. In fact, I think that we should encourage people even younger than 18, 15, 16, 17 to operate as if they are a full-blown adult. I'm not talking about dating and relationships and marriage. I'm talking about accountability for your actions. I mean, we shouldn't say, he was 19, so he couldn't really, I don't know how he was raised, but I think if I was his father, I would encourage him very young age, 14, 15, no, you are responsible for the decisions you make. Be mindful of these type of people. Be mindful of these life situations because your life will be what you make it. That's just my little 2 cents on that.
But we can do that without completely exonerating the person who took advantage of that 19-year-old, right? Like, because we understand if they did take advantage. And you're right. And I am being far too like direct in saying like, oh, she's a predator. I don't know that she's a predator. He's a young dude. He probably, but right. I just, it makes me slightly uncomfortable. But again, you're right. These are human beings. It's arbitrary as freak to say, 18 is legal or 21 is legal. Or they're all of age and all these things are crazily arbitrary. I can't say for sure that's wild as hell to just try to say that that's predator. I take a lot of that back. Thank you for pointing that out for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you.
I want to point out a slight parallel. A good parallel to me is, we're looking at the situation where we have a younger guy who's making a lot of money. He puts some of it aside. Later on down the road, he's taking advantage of that. If we switch it around and say we have a female and she's putting aside a nest egg for a divorce that might happen one day, can we look on that with the same, with the same level of, it was definitely a sneaky move. It was definitely, it was very clever of you. It feels like it hits with a different energy. Why is that? Go ahead, Shay.
That was more than a nest egg. Like, this isn't just some rainy day type of funds. Like, it's not the don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing type of deal. This is full blown deceit. And anytime that you have to, and like I said, he was sliding out of that momager type of arena being that young when he got with his wife. So if most of his assets were in his mother's name to begin with, but keeping him, like, he knew exactly what he was doing and she did not. And if a woman did that, that is still deceitful. It's okay to have, but when we are one, then we have to discuss what's not going to be a us thing, and I still get to keep my me thing. So if these two accounts are mine, don't worry about it or whatever the case may be, because we can set those type of boundaries within our relationship.
So,
But that
Shay,
comes with communication.
Shay, just to be clear, you would be equally as critical if the roles were reversed as far as their gender. That's the only thing that's switched. You would be equally as critical.
Deceit.
Correct.
Yeah, deceit is deceit, but I don't think there's. I thought we weren't going to
Well,
make
maybe
this a
divorce fraud.
morality talk,
Right.
though.
Yeah.
Well,
To be
if
fair,
this-
that's what we were saying.
This might actually be divorce fraud. I think they're in Morocco. Is that where they're based?
Divorce.
So I don't know about Moroccan laws, and I'm trying to find out more. But again, this is probably going to be best left up to the courts. But there is a possible case of divorce fraud. It might be the case that what he's doing here is illegal, and in that case, then it's like, yeah, then it's bad. Don't do illegal shit. But I don't know about Morocco, anyways, and I don't know for sure if it is divorce fraud. Just to be clear, but it might be.
Me neither. I was watching the lead attorney's video on this, and he was like basically breaking down that he was saying lead attorney is a social media person, not the lead attorney in this case. Just to be clear. But yeah, he was basically saying that once the money comes in, it's a marital asset, and any person can do anything. For example, he gave the example of like if the marital assets came in and the wife had access to the account and took all of the money, went to Vegas and gambled every single penny of it, then there's like no recourse. The man can't sue her for it. They can't get any of the money back from the casino. They just have to deal with that. Likewise, if the husband has like a gambling or spending habit, then like that's whatever it is. So whoever has access to the money, as long as they don't do anything illegal with the money, like doing something, whatever, then at that point, then everything is fair game. So then because he had the money, and he was putting that money into the mother's account, then that's like technically legal. And so then yeah, right. Now, what I would say is that does, because a lot of people in that thread that you had, Shamo, excuse me, a lot of those people were saying things like, it's wild to be in a house with your husband and not know like that house is not yours, and not be on the deed, and not like be there registering the cars and realizing whose cars it is and things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, culturally, I do know that in some cultures, women are not privy to certain information that it could be considered head of household business, man business, whatever the case may be. However, even in their culture, like, we would still have to, at some point in time, Mama came over, sat at the table with a book, a ledger, or something, and we have I'm washing dishes, and I just catch a conversation about, oh, you know, the 60 million, whatever pounds, euro, whatever the currency is. For me not to know anything, and it's not in the USA, I'm not at this point. Before we can go anywhere, I need to know what your relationship with money is like, not just what's in your bank account or your credit score, because I have too much to lose. So not knowing that's asinine. It's wild to me. His mother, with me being a mother of a son, okay? When it comes to accountability, like Nico was discussing, I'm teaching my son accountability. Please do not bring me into any mess, because I'm not for it with you. Don't swear on my name when you're lying. And you know what I'm saying? Like, don't say you got it from the mud. Like, none of that. Don't lie on me, sir. On my mama, nothing.
I feel like it's got to be pretty easy. I mean, maybe I'm wrong because I've never been in this income bracket, but I feel like at their bracket, I feel like it must be fairly easy to hide your actual income, how much money you're actually making. I mean, case in point, if they're together for 10 years, he's making 1/5 of what he's actually making, and everything is fine, you know. And I can see why, if you have that much money, at that point, you're able to go out and you're able to buy the things, and there's not really much resistance that you're meeting in terms of we can't afford that. Like, I don't think
This is why accountants get over and you get so many embezzlement cases, because like when you reach a certain level, you just stop paying attention to finances. I'll never do that. And I don't, where there's a zillion whatever, like, you still need to be in control of your books. Don't let it get to be that out of control, 'cause then you end up with stuff like this.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to be fair, I'm sure she didn't expect this is what would happen, but definitely it's a good lesson to always pay attention to your finances and your spouse's finances, I guess. You know, keep an eye on that. Hire a private investigator. Just kidding.
Something that's traumatizing.
Sound
Her
like
next
you?
is,
Sound like we getting there.
I remember Oprah said that. I remember Oprah saying, like, as wealthy as she was, she said, I always write my own checks. She never let anybody else do that because she always wanted to know, even whatever the project was, I want to know how much everything is costing. And I think it makes sense. I mean, you saw Tony Braxton went bankrupt, and TLC, they were #1 album when they went bankrupt, and just you see this stuff happen all the time. It's too easy. It's hard for me to manage, like, especially when you start doing automated stuff. Like, okay, I got streaming services and I got all these like recurring bills and monthly things that are coming in automatically and on auto pay and all that stuff. It's much more difficult to manage even that if you're not really paying attention. So I can only imagine when now you're paying accountants and paying butlers and paying like different multiple mortgages and like child support and all of this kind of nonsense. I can only imagine how impossible that is. So then it does kind of make sense to me why it would be so easy to just say, oh no, the accountant takes care of it. So as opposed to even having to really demonstrate where that money and stuff is going. I can see that. It's not a matter of her being careless or anything like that.
I think the Oprah situation that you just brought up kind of is a different situation than this, because we're talking about Oprah writing her own checks, knowing where the money that she's bringing in is going. This situation is his wife going and watching him sign the lease for the house or sign whatever for the car. So that's a little bit of a different situation. And you're shaking your head, but it is different. You're not going to be at the fucking car dealership when I'm buying you a Lamborghini. All you care about is the Lamborghini that I'm buying you. You don't know if I'm buying 3 for myself. Then it's like, all right, I'm keeping the 3 somewhere else. You care about the one I bought you.
Personally, I want to make sure that we're still good. Like, I'm always concerned.
I buy you a
So,
Lamborghini,
I
you
want my
good.
Lamborghini, but I also want to know what's in that account that you buying a Lamborghini with, and call me nosy or whatever the case may be. And maybe that's why I'm single. But I want to know.
Yeah, I think, man, you know, if everything's being taken care of, it is so easy to just ignore it, to not look at the numbers. For example, we've all had jobs before. We've all had employers that we receive paychecks from. We don't know their finances. We don't know how much money is coming into the business. We don't know their financial standing. All we know is that our paycheck is signed and that it's either a direct deposit or we're able to cash it and it doesn't bounce. But we don't know the finances of the. Now, I know obviously a marriage is different than an employer-employee relationship. But my point is, when everything is taken care of, it's very easy to just, you know, you kind of fall asleep. You have the car at home, you drive it every day. That every time you flick the light switch, the lights come on, and a big beautiful house that, you know, you live in with your husband. So it's very easy to say, to ignore the nitty gritty of them. Not that I think women or anybody should, but it's easy. I think it's easier said. It's easier. Oh, it happens easier than people would care to admit.
It's not a wealthy person argument either. I mean, if you're a person who's even in the lower class, you know, if you've ever had any kind of credit card debt, it's very easy to just kind of whoops, forgot about that for a few months. It's your brain is designed to try to throw it out. It's bad news. It's stressful stuff. Especially if you start getting the compounding interest and you start doing the math. It's very stressful stuff. It's easy to put it aside and say, all right, well, you know, I'm going to look aside for a few minutes. And I can imagine if you're dealing with $20,000, $30,000, $100,000 kind of debts. I mean, I don't know if I'd be sleeping at all. That sounds like some serious stuff. And again, this is all speculation. We have no idea what their dynamic was like, but it just goes to show that when it comes to money, like nobody's really making the best decision. Somebody said that earlier. I think it was Erudite. Nobody's making the objective best decision with their money. It's not how people work. We kind of just do what's in front of us, and it's really easy for us to forget the bad decisions that we make and the things that we ignore. So now that go ahead.
I said adulting ain't easy.
Adulting ain't easy. So I think it sounds like we kind of talked about this quite a lot. We have a lot of good stuff out there. I want to make this positive and forward focused. So if we could go around and everybody give either a recommendation for something that you think should change or something that you'd like to see people changing. So something that we can start to get out of this rut that specifically Americans are in, where divorce is now more common than marriage. Overwhelmingly, majority of divorces are started by women. There's got to be a reason for that. You know, what can we do to kind of reverse this growing problem? I want to start with Shireen, and we'll go around to everybody.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that for me?
What would be like a change that you would recommend, whether it's like at the individual level, you want to see someone changing something, or like a policy that you'd like to see changed, something that's going to help to push us away from these issues that we're having in our society that's getting worse?
For me, it's all about individuality as a person. I feel like if people start maturing and growing and adulting for real, that can change. I feel like a lot of people are selfish. A lot of people are not even self-aware, let alone can even contribute fairly or the same as someone else. You know what I mean? So to me, it's like the marriage killers and everything. How it's like communication, finance, and infidelity. A lot of that stuff is really just boils down to communication, because all of that stuff has to come and is going to come. You know what I mean? So if we can just get to communicating, and biggest thing is treating people how you want to be treated, the world will be a better place. Like that's, so I don't really have any policies or anything. I think just people need to work on themselves and be forever growing and trying to mature and try to be the best thing that they can be outside of not just alone, but just in these serious relationships for life. You know, it's give and take, the whole thing. And that's all I got to say. Mic drop.
You got it. And what do you think, Fanatiq? Should we make this closing statements or?
Sure, whatever you think. I think so. I think we had a great conversation so far. I think it's good.
Sure, yeah. Shireen, if you want, you can shout out yourself and your socials if you have anything.
Oh, I've never done this before. Okay, so here we go. I really only mess with Instagram, and it's only for a moment, the number 4. And I don't really post much of anything, especially not political or like conversational, deep thinking. But it's just me and my personal life. So if you want to come follow me, more than welcome. And it was very much a pleasure being able to be on the panel with all of you, especially with you all having your own little soapbox in your private lives. So it was very much a pleasure to hear all of your views. So thank you for having me.
That's awesome. Let's see. And I hear that there might be something to ask you about some music that you might be doing. Well, you've been put out on the spot. It's all right. You have no choice but to tell us now.
You can hear me on Fanatiq's platform on some of his singles and albums.
It just clicked for me. Wow, that's where I've heard your voice before. Okay. Hello. My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can go check that out on Spotify, or I think all like music platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Fanatiq, for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Tones, close it out, something you recommend, and then shout out yourself if you can.
All right, cool. So basically, Shireen took my she jacked what I was about to say. I feel like communication is the most important part of any relationship. You got to be, trust, honesty, all of that comes with communication, right? So that's very important. Also, it's funny because I was having this conversation with a bunch of randoms on some Facebook post, getting attacked. I feel like people shouldn't get married if you broke, because 50% of marriages end in divorce, and a third of that end because of financial issues. So, I mean, if you're not in the right place in the mind and in the pockets, you probably shouldn't be trying to bring someone else into your squalor, because it's not going to end well. There's going to be a lot of issues. So, yeah, kill me for that. I don't care. Let me see my socials. I mean, I really don't mess with anything too much. I used to podcast. I don't really podcast anymore. I used to Twitch. I don't really Twitch anymore. I don't YouTube anymore. I don't really do too much, but I do got a lot of opinions, and I speak my mind a lot. That's why I get banned a lot on Facebook. My Facebook is Eric Killmonger Stevens, because I don't want the federales knowing where I'm at. Nah, it's really for employers. I don't want people searching me up and then firing me because I support something that they don't. So Eric Killmonger Stevens is one. Another one is John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt is my other one. So if one gets banned and the other gets banned, and I'm on the other one, so yeah, come see what's going on. We can argue a lot together.
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. Fanatiq?
Well, yeah, I got something. It's a New Testament scripture, and it is, "For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." That's the King James version. The NIV is, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." And I think, to me, and again, I can't know for sure, but I would imagine because of the age gap, it makes me inclined to believe that this was a financial situation. That she was after this man for some money because he was a very, very young man that had a whole bunch of money, and it's kind of like biting her, and to some degree. And we see these things happen all the time. I think you'll find, if he does decide to take her money, you're going to see it's going to come back and haunt him too, because you will reap what you sow. And so I agree with what people were saying already about really working on yourself and your character, finding like a person that you genuinely enjoy as a human being, as opposed to looking at it as like a possibly financial thing. Yes, you should probably have money before you get married because it's going to put a lot of strain on you, and we're in a capitalist system, so money is important. Don't try to pretend like we're not ever going to be not be in a capitalist system. So yeah, I would say that probably working on yourself, maturing, working on improvement in communication and things like that, and get rid of that love of money. Not saying money is bad. It didn't say money is the root of all evil. The love of money. So I would say that would improve a lot of these situations. And you can find me in twitch.tv/Mr. Fanatiq, YouTube Ask Fanatiq, Twitter, and all the other social medias is Mr. Fanatiq. That's MrFanatiq. And you can hear myself and Shireen on some good tracks on Spotify, Tidal, all of those things. A great album of Retro Future, where the outro, which will be in this video, is Shireen singing Magenta Skies, as it is for the rest of my content. Check that stuff out.
My favorite song.
Yeah, pick that.
Awesome.
Okay, Nico Nice.
I forgot how to unmute my mic for a second. Okay, no, man. First and foremost, man, this is a really enjoyable conversation to have. I'm glad we had it. I think the one thing I would say anybody could take and apply to their lives is never forget developing yourself. Never ignore self-development. I think when people get into marriages and relationships, when people take on a new job, eventually the mundane sets in, the monotony sets in, the minutia of just daily life sets in, and you stop growing, you stop stretching, you stop pushing the envelope, fail to develop yourself. So I think if we all continue to do that, we'd all be better off in everything that we do. That's kind of my little nugget that I'll leave with. My socials, please follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. Everywhere I'm Nico Nice, Nikonice. I post content to all platforms. I'm actively trying very, very hard to grow every platform. And thus far it's going pretty well. Again, that's Nico Nice. I post comedic content, post cultural and political commentary and content in that space. And I also do street interviews. So I go on the street and ask people a ton of random questions, a ton of content that you all can go and binge now. So it's Nico Nice everywhere. Nikonice, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
You got it. All right. Erudite?
Yeah, I think if you're approaching a relationship thinking about how you're going to get yours, you're probably approaching a relationship bad, and that's probably the starting place. If you're fixated on everything that your partner's doing wrong, you're probably in a bad place in your relationship, and you're probably doing it wrong. And most of these problems arise from people being shit at relationship. I'm not going to make policy recommendations. I'm not informed enough to make that, but yeah, sorry about the dog.
He doesn't agree.
It's all good. Yeah, he doesn't agree.
Wait, where can people find you?
Yeah, where can people find you?
Not so erudite. Pretty much everywhere. Spelled how it is on screen.
You got it. All right. I'm not going to give too much of a closing statement, but I do want to say, listen carefully. Of course, we still have one closing statement left, but listen carefully to everybody's closing statement. It's all self-empowerment. It's all self-actualization. Everybody here is telling you, do what is best for you, but think critically. You need to think critically. Don't live your life on autopilot. Don't make decisions based on what you see people around you doing. Everybody's different. Everybody has different things that they come from. We spent a lot of recent history pushing for equal rights, and we got really far. And I think that now that we've gotten there, we need to get out of the realm of negative conversation, which is this is why people break up. This is why conversations are bad. This is why relationships fail. We need to start getting to positive conversation. It's how you can empower yourself, be a better person. The reality is most people can be together if you just work hard enough. So it's just a matter of how hard you want to work, really. And everybody here is telling you that. So don't forget that. I'm Pawns, just Pawns. Instagram, just Pawns. You're not really going to see me on a lot of stuff right now, but soon I'll start getting back on the wheel. And I'm always here on the Fanatiq show. So, and then taking it over to last but not least, Shay. Close it out, Shay.
Okay. It's been great talking to you guys. I really enjoy all of you all's perspectives on things. So, thanks. And what I would say, legally, know your facts. You always have to remember that we have to take morals out, and that's something that I have a very, very hard time with, which is why I'm so slow to receive too much of anything when it comes to like other people, because I'm always thinking about morals. But also be the change that you want to see. We have to take accountability, whether it's man, whether it's woman, whatever you subscribe to. The first person that you are accountable to and for is yourself. So when you are out making these type of decisions, when you're trying to be with someone, make sure that you have your things together first. And that's not saying that you're perfect, but understand your imperfections and always be willing to grow.
Yes.
You can find me on Instagram, Shamo28, or my podcast page. I'm just saying _reloaded. And also IJS _reloaded on Facebook.
You got it. All right. Well, everybody, there's going to be a post show. Usually it involves pulling people in and kind of talking to them about stuff. But it seems like we're ready to wrap everything up here, Fanatiq.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I genuinely appreciate the conversation. And I think maybe I might be an outlier here, but I just like other people's ideas. I like to debate, and I like to kind of enforce my idea over to people, but I like also to just be able to hear a conversation and like hear different perspectives. Nico, your mic is you got a siren going off, but hearing other perspectives, and that's interesting. It doesn't need to be like where we're fighting or contentious or crazy. I just like to hear other people's thoughts genuinely, and I think in this kind of a situation, there's no right or any wrong. It's just, this is what it is. Like, we have our different perspectives and you're entitled to your perspective. I can't prove to you why my perspective is great. And so that's what creates, I think, good conversation that doesn't have to be blood sporty and stuff. Next week, what I would like to talk about is the Jonathan Majors situation. I think that's just another person that's being canceled. And, I think might not have learned anything from this not Bill Cosby, from the, what's his face, Johnny Depp situation. It feels like it's just like recurring. Like once again, we have accusations already being canceled, and just kind of sounds kind of nuts. Amber Heard is now being slated again to be in the next Aquaman sequel. Blows my freaking mind. Yeah, so there's a lot to talk about. So I'm hoping some of these people will want to come back. As always, I'm more than willing to talk to any person. I don't care about how big your following is. I just hope that you have something to contribute. If you want to talk and want to be on a panel, reach out if it's something that interests you. And I'm hoping you guys will come back. And hoping some of you guys might want to stick around. We're going to continue talking, but you're no longer obligated because we've already taken care of everything that we need to. And I appreciate you guys for your time and being part of the conversation. Sincerely.
This deep and floating to my